What's going on? What's going on? Let's get into some boxing. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And the topic we're going to talk about today is Garry Russell, and is he being blackballed by PBC? Is he being blackballed by Floyd Mayweather? Is he being played or blackballed somehow from Al Heyman? And the short answer to that is no. You know what I mean? People want to know, is he blocking the fight when it comes to Devin Haney and when it comes to Garry Russell? Is somehow PBC getting in the middle of that, and are they blackballing him? And I can say it again, the answer to that is no. This is the reality of the situation. The number one thing is when it comes to this particular fight, I've let it be known when it comes to this fight that I believe this is just, Devin Haney he's an Eddie Hearn fighter. He signed to under Eddie Hearn's promotion, and Eddie Hearn's moving him the same way that he does everybody else. Just like he did with Anthony Joshua, let's attach his name to somebody else, which was Deontay Wilder. Let's act like we want to fight him, even coming up with BS contracts and everything like that when Deontay Wilder agreed to a particular, to the fight with a low ball offer. Sound familiar? Low offer, agreed to it, agreed to all the terms, then they get the contract, and it has what? No date, no venue. Garry Russell agrees to everything on a particular contract. He gets a contract. The Zone's not on the contract. Eddie Hearn Promotions not on the contract. It says if they agree to those. If they agree to that, to the fight. Then there's also option. They also wanted options on the fight before as well. And then, they didn't have the money. The Zone wasn't putting up the money, so they got to somehow try to get the money. Then after that, we can only do it on November 7th. If you can't do it November 7th, then we can't do the fight. It's always something. Sound familiar? It's the same thing they do with Eddie Hearn. It's the same game, just a different fighter. That's all it is. And instead of him being the mouthpiece, Eddie Hearn being the mouthpiece, he's just using somebody else as a mouthpiece. That's why he stays quiet. Everybody's like, why is Eddie Hearn so quiet about this? Why is Eddie Hearn so quiet about this situation? Because he's using somebody else as the mouthpiece. And I've already said who that person is. That's all he's doing, is using someone else as the mouthpiece. And people have so much love for this for this particular guy that is being used as a mouthpiece. They just for whatever reason, they're just closing their eyes to the reality of what's going on. And it doesn't matter how many times this guy, gets caught up in his lies, gets, flip-flopping, between this. 1 minute is this, 1 minute is that. It doesn't matter how many times he gets caught up with inconsistencies, we'll say. People just, for whatever reason, just keeping their eyes closed to it because of the love they have for that man. That's the reality of the situation. So when it comes to Garry Russell, PBC is trying to do or Al Heyman is trying to do what's in the best interest of him. That's all it is. And not only that, this is the fight that he wants. So Al Heyman is putting him in position where he can still get that fight. He doesn't, this fight doesn't, happen, which is not going to happen, by the way, because it's always been Gamboa. That's the people that Eddie Hearn, Bill Haney, Devin Haney, they've all known that at the end of the day, that's always been the person they're going to fight. The whole purpose of this Garry Russell thing was to build up all this media drama. That's all it was been about. But Garry Russell still has a route. He can fight Javier Fortuna. That's the route that they've given him. And then after fighting Javier Fortuna, he becomes Devin Haney's mandatory. He becomes Devin Haney's mandatory. Devin Haney gets put into a position where, they get put into a purse bid. Purse bid happens. PBC wins that purse bid because the Zone has no money, or they're not investing any money in boxing anymore. They win that purse bid. Garry Russell gets his fight. It's on PBC, whether it be on Fox, whether it be on Showtime, maybe even pay-per-view. And Garry Russell ends up getting everything that he wants in the end. When it came, I remember people saying he should leave. I remember when everybody was saying that Earl Spence needed to leave PBC as well, because he's not getting these fights. He's not getting the Thurman fight. He's not getting the Mikey, not the Mikey. He's not getting the Sean Porter fight. He's not getting the Keith Thurman fight. So he needs to leave PBC. That's what everybody was saying. He should just sign a Top Rank because at least he knows he'll get the Crawford fight. Isn't that what everybody else was saying? But he followed the plan. He was smart. They got him other fights. You know, he kept fighting. He kept promoting himself, you know, whether it be on social media, whether it be going to different fighting events, you know, and he continued to grow his name. And it got to the point where you're a moron for not fighting him because of so much money to fights that pertain to him. And then when that started to happen, then everybody wanted to fight him. Mikey knew that. That's why he fought him, because he saw what was going on and had seen the level that man had got to. Then after that, Sean Porter did. And now, Danny Garcia is doing it. He ended up getting all the fights that he wanted to get. Got all the fights. He did what was necessary for him to get to that position. Garry Russell could have gotten all these fights. People are saying, oh, how did Tank get the Santa Cruz fight and him not get the Santa Cruz fight? The reality of the situation is because Tank's name has grown to this level, because he continuously pushes himself on social media, because he does multiple, he's staying active doing multiple fights a year. And even when he wasn't fighting, he was still in the media. He was still in people's brains. He was still in people's eyes. Garry Russell didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do, which is fine. But because of that, he didn't grow to the level where financially Santa Cruz believed that it was in his best interest to fight him. If Santa Cruz could make the same amount of money fighting Garry Russell that he could fighting Tank, he would fight Garry Russell Jr. Garry Russell Jr., you probably lose a 12-round decision. Gervonta Tank Davis, you're going to the ICU. The reality of the situation is you're going to the ICU. You might take years off of your career with what he could possibly do to you. But Garry Russell never built himself up to that particular position. PBC, we've known this forever, but people keep reminding themselves and forgetting depending on the situation. We've known that they're their own bosses. They can do whatever the hell they want to do. They can say yes to fights. They can say no to fights. No one is forcing them to do anything. So those fighters that supposedly, quote, can't get certain fights, they will set you up with the plan to put yourself into a position where you can get those fights. If you want to put into work. Earl Spence put into work. Deontay Wilder put into work. Gervonta Tank Davis put into work. If Gervonta Tank Davis was fighting once a year, wasn't getting in trouble, wasn't on social media, he'd be in the same place Garry Russell was. If Deontay Wilder was fighting once a year, talking for about a month about Anthony Joshua, then disappearing for 10, 11 months, after that, he'd be in the exact same place Garry Russell would. If Earl Spence was only fighting once a year, knocking out his mandatory, and then going quiet, everything going black for a whole year, he'd be in the exact same position that Garry Russell's in. Garry Russell blackballed himself. Is it fair that he has to put in all that work? No, it's not fair. It's not fair for some of us and the things that we have to do in order to be successful in this world. But we can't sit back there. I'm not sitting back there and saying, oh, well, because, you know, this guy over here, all he has to do is this, and this to get to this position. This is all I'm going to do as well. And I should just be in that position. No, I have to bust my ass. I have to work 2-3 times harder than everybody else in order to get to the space I'm at. That's just the reality of what it is. That's what it is. Garry Russell was in the perfect place to do that as well. He had just chosen not to. And in the last couple of months, he's been pushing the pedal. He's been pushing the gas. And you see the results. You see how everybody's on him. You see how much people are talking about him. He had all the tools to become a superstar. In the ring, he did it. Outside of the ring, even though he had all the tools, he chose not to use them. Right now, he's using them. And his name is growing leaps and bounds. All he has to do is continue doing that. That's all he needs to continue to do. And in the meantime, doesn't even matter because he's been set up in a path where he can get that fight by the first half of next year. He can get that fight with no funny business. With no funny business whatsoever. And PBC is setting that up for him. Al Heyman is setting that up for him. You know, as far as what's going on with him, with everything else, you know, what people are wondering, why is this, why are there issues? What's going on with this particular fight? Why is it not getting done? It's clear as day. Everybody's just closing their eyes to the reality that's right in front of them. It's Eddie Hearn fighter using the same blueprint. The only thing is different is the mouthpiece. The mouthpiece that keeps tripping over himself, just like Eddie Hearn does as well. But people are going to rock with whatever they're going to rock with. But just like with Earl Spence, in his situation, time always reveals all. Didn't we say Deontay Wilder should have got the IBF title? You know, but Anthony Joshua got that shot because it was in the IBF was champion's best interest to do that fight because of the amount of money that he could get. But if Deontay Wilder had got that belt and was a unified champion, wouldn't it have strengthened his position when it came to Anthony Joshua? Wouldn't that have been the best thing for the company? Wouldn't that have been the best thing for PBC? But they didn't care about that. They cared about what was in the best interest of that fighter. And that's how they've always been. They don't give two ish about if Devin Haney's going to sign to them later or this and that or trying to block back Garry because this person doesn't like them. They don't care about none of that. Al Heyman always does what's best for each fighter individually, and he focuses on that particular fighter when it pertains to whatever situation he's in, period. That's been how they've been doing things. That's been their motto, and it's worked. And they're not changing that at this particular time. So Garry Russell needs to just stay fast, listen, follow the blueprint, and he'll end up getting everything that he wants. Because one thing I've always known about, seen about when it comes to Al Heyman, when people are like, why this, why that, why this, why that? And then poof, it's like, oh, okay, I see it now. That's what always happened with that. So I know with him, long as he's willing to put in the work, like the other ones have put in the work, they will guide him towards the goals that he wants to get to. Using his tools not only inside the ring, but outside the ring. They will guide him towards that goal with no problem. And as far as his other situation, people need to open up their eyes. Because what's going on is right in front of y'all, and y'all just choose to have your eyes closed off the love that you have for that man. But for now, like, subscribe, share. I'm out.